So thank you, Alex and Fee. Over to you.
Great, thanks, Ellie. Thanks for the practice. Even though we live and breathe this stuff, I think it's always so nice to be guided and notice just even the shift of my energy. It was a little sort of like, ooh, coming in here, we're going to talk. Hopefully, I'm more grounded and coherent for the rest of this. So, yeah, we're here to talk about the power of strategic positioning, and we'll cover kind of three key areas, and we'll swap between me and Fee. So the first, why positioning matters, and we'll use our sort of experience of having gone through this process again recently to hopefully bring color to it, to bring it to life. So why it matters, I think, and specifically around sort of mindfulness, well-being businesses in the workplace, it matters for all businesses. But I think especially or a special focus for ours in trying to match what we do with the business environment. We'll talk a little bit about shifting from kind of the abstract or the ideas and the practice of positioning into how do you make it tangible for the business or for yours as a sole trader. So linking to business outcomes, the rubber hitting the road. And then we'll talk about kind of market context and trends. So how to make your life easier ultimately by swimming with the currents rather than either not with them or hopefully not against them. And as I kind of alluded to before, a bit of context. So we've recently gone through this specific positioning process again that we'll talk about. This is probably the third time we've done it in 4 years, kind of from the ground up. We've been tweaking our positioning as we go, but this is the third time. And so it's fresh. And I think that's important to sort of say it's not a one and done thing, certainly not in our experience. You know, our environments are changing, we're changing, economies are changing. So positioning is something you want to kind of keep an eye on, make sure you are correctly positioned as things shift around us. So the framework we'll talk about was developed by a lady called April Dunford, and she wrote a book called Obviously Awesome, which we'll show at the end. And what's really nice about it, or what we like, is there's a simple set of processes that you can go through, which help you sort of get to an end point. And I think her approach we found fresh as well. And it came to us through one of our clients, one of our fastest growing clients. They were chatting about it, and it sounded like, you know, something that we could revisit. And so I think that was also nice for us to sort of see it in practice for them and see how they had implemented in the success, and we implemented ourselves. So looking forward to sharing it with you today. So let me just share my screen. Here we go. And right. So as I mentioned, we'll try and bring it to life as best possible. So this is a slide from our overview deck, and it's kind of a sort of what it was and transitioning into what it will be to kind of start to show. And I'll give some examples of the positioning we do, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what we particularly did. So first line, we have decades of experience in the fast-paced, high-pressure advertising, media, and digital industries. So here we're looking to place ourselves in the kind of context of their world for relevance, for our target market being advertising, media, and digital industries, and that we are kind of relevant. We've been there. You can see in the second line, we've crossed out a bit here. And what I wanted to show here is that in the past, we primarily led with our kind of specialized expertise in the kind of mindfulness well-being area. And because we genuinely believe that is that's unique and what we bring into the space. But what we've shifted towards is we still talk about it, but we don't make it the primary focus, especially in early conversations. So we prioritize kind of the wider business role we play when we come into the organization. So as change consultants, you can see we talk about being change consultants as well as performance and well-being practitioners. with our highly skilled facilitators, coaches, and trainers. And what we're looking to do is talk about the positive outcomes or the impact the skills we have produce on the business environment. So what this leads into is sort of by making mindfulness and well-being a regular part of the workplace, it becomes more than just an experience. So rather than a single workshop where you go in and you give people an experience, what we want to talk about is that when we come in and work with you over time, it's more than experience. It becomes we create change within the organization, within the business, which drives long-term, long-lasting shift. And so I know I've said a lot there, and that's a lot of, we talk about that a lot more, but we kind of set that up front, and we want to talk about this kind of change that we create in business rather than just being practitioners. And then the last line, we know the workplace environment, we understand the pressures, and we speak the language of business. Again, painting into their world and relevance, and we'll talk about that a lot more in detail coming up. This is the second one here, is also a slide from our deck. And this starts to look a little bit about at the kind of idea of trends that I mentioned in the opening. And what we're looking to do in the eyes of our prospect, I guess, someone we're speaking to who we want to work with, is position ourselves in this kind of problem space. So we're relevant to a problem that they might be aware of. And we use statistics, and I think a lot of people do use statistics. And what we want to talk about more today is the importance not just of statistics, but trends or narratives. So stories that they might be aware of, that they will feel and see that you fit into within their business. Well, hopefully they're feeling, not in sort of hopefully they're in trouble or in pain, but hopefully that they, if they do have these challenges, are aware of them, and so that they can sort of piece together how you would fit. And really, again, here it's about not just applying, say, mindfulness to your business. It's about saying, hey, we know, and this is one of these 20, the one highlighted here is a trend we've observed this year, we see coming through a lot in research, is this identification that there's a skill gap for managers, that they don't have the tools to support individuals in organizations. So the leadership know their managers are struggling. So there's a story and a narrative that we know is out there, and we have the tools to help equip managers to be able to support individuals. So we're attaching to this narrative, to this theme, this story. And finally, I think here with the stats are important, is just to give a sense of the scale of a problem. Often it's not just you, this is happening everywhere. People don't like the finger being pointed at, oh, you and your problems, like it's all like, oh, I feel uncomfortable when people do that to me. So it's not just you, it's a big issue. You're not alone. But we can help solve these trends, these issues which are happening. So yeah, so these first two slides are sort of scene setters, really, to give you a sense of kind of what we'll kind of talk about in detail coming up. So Fee, do you want to jump into this?
Thanks, Alex. So Alex has set the scene of, a little bit about what we've done in positioning and what we all see in the market, but what often gets played back to us or what we hear can be quite different. And I'm sure you have all experienced this before, but my favorite one, when I say what we do and talk about workplace mindfulness, is someone says, when can I book one of your yoga classes? Even very good friends of mine still think I'm a yoga instructor when I tell them what they do. So there's this clearly a disconnect between where our potential customers put us and what we actually do. Another personal favorite is I've tried all of that stuff once and it didn't work for me. Or when we then go into businesses, the two that I hear most often are that we'd love to do it, but we don't have budget. Which to me means that we haven't positioned it correctly, because everyone has budget. It's just they're not prioritizing, or they can't see the benefits of what we're presenting more clearly. And then the other one, which I'm sure you come up against as well, which we have an employee assistance program, and that covers everything. So why these comments are important to acknowledge is that they are all signals of the perception of what we do. And it means that our potential customers are automatically, without thinking, putting us into a budget, a bucket, and a perception of where they think that we fit. And that's important because it means that they're already assuming our benefits, our costs, and our ROI to them before we've even started the pitch. And as we know, that might also be based on their personal understanding of well-being and not just what it means for their organization. So why positioning is then important, and you can move on, Alex. Yeah, so why positioning is really important is that it quite simply helps put everybody on the same page, but as quickly as possible. So it's a lot easier to go into the hows and whys of what we do once we've kind of got that node of understanding that they appreciate what we're actually coming to do and what our benefits are up front. And Alex has already mentioned trends a little bit already, and this is something that we will revisit throughout this quick chat, is that it's so much easier to fit in to an existing category, pain point, or challenge than it is to try to stand out, to try and recreate a whole narrative, to try and be the first, to be the best, to be the biggest. Sometimes it's easier, as Alex said, we just put the boat in with the whichever way the river's flowing, and we go with that to get there quicker. Because in general, people tend to have the same problems. So making them feel part of something and not kind of standing out gives a moment of reassurance for them. The barriers kind of drop a little bit, and it allows that follow-on question or that follow-on conversation just that little bit easier.
Yeah, and those sort of common, there are big buckets and you need to narrow down, but in the workplace, there's usually, communication, engagement, stress, leadership, misaligned. There are these big like buckets in which you can fit yourself into, and you can get nods and thing just from starting with a big bucket and get more specific. I think that's also important to say.
So why this all became really important for us is that at the start, well, probably the end of last year, we realized that we were being pretzels. We were contorting ourselves and having a tendency to say yes just to get in the door, because we knew once we were in, we'd be able to demonstrate what we could do and the benefits and the impact on the teams. So we were trying to make ourselves as appealing as possible to everybody, to be everything to everyone. And we just had this moment where we realized that we were drifting away more and more from our beliefs, more and more from our core product and offering. And our people pleasing and customization was taking so much energy because we were effectively starting from fresh every time, and we got to the point where we were actually confusing ourselves as to what we were doing and offering. And we actually had a big pitch just at Christmas time with one of the biggest media companies in the world, and they'd asked us to help them come in with their wellbeing program. And at the end of the day, they just wanted yoga classes. Terribly frustrating. But I even thought about, well, shall I just go and do yoga? Because that's what people keep asking for. But I stood firm and said, this is not what we do. That's one solution that you're looking for, but performance and well-being in the workplace is so much more. And when you're ready for the next step, give us a call. And I think that was a clear kind of moment that we couldn't be something to everybody. So then that kind of led to a couple of sort of penny drop moments. And so the first realization was that we didn't have to try and stand out. We didn't have to trailblaze. There are so many different benefits that mindfulness and well-being can bring into the workplace. We didn't have to try and be different every time. And it was okay to be firm in what we did so that there was no frustration on our part that we weren't being understood, because we were trying to change every time. So by holding firm and saying, this is what we do, there was a huge sense of relief on our part. It felt quite freeing to be able to say no, and to realize that consistency trumps customization. And by maintaining our position, by reaffirming what we do, I believe that we will speak with this business again down the line. And that also led to us realizing that it's okay if we're not a match for everybody. As I say, I do believe this business will come back when they're ready, but it's okay that we're not a fit, which then gave us not only clarity on what we do and our products, but it gave us real focus on our audience as well, because when you're trying to be something to everybody, you're also trying to speak to everybody as well, and with that scatters your energy and your focus too. So those kind of like penny drop moments came together, as Alex mentioned, when our one of our clients mentioned April Dunford's book. Obviously awesome, and there's a real clear process that will take you through some 5 steps that just allow all of that realization to come together as a strategy, and to kind of create clarity in what we're going to market with.
Cool. So to get to the sort of center of it all, what is positioning? So she defines it as the act of deliberately defining how you are the best at something that a defined market cares a lot about. So deliberate definition, I am this. Why are we the best? What do we do within this space that makes us unique and the best and a great fit for you? And this bit about a defined market caring about, they see the value. You don't have to convince them. They're defined. They know. It's almost like you talk to them about it and they're like, oh, we've been looking for something like you, because they care so much about what it is that you
That's the
do.
dream.
Yeah, they just might not have figured it out. But I think that exactly what, and the more targeted and the more the right people you can navigate towards, the more of them you'll meet. I think what's important I want to highlight here is there are certainly, to my mind, 2 layers of risk if you don't position right. The first is that if you're undefined, it's hard to understand. If you don't show people why you're the best, they won't really buy. They'll go for something else. And if you don't find the defined market, then you'll be speaking to the wrong people. They won't care. That's kind of, I think, a surface layer that makes sense when you read this. There's a second layer, which is, if you don't position yourself well, us as humans will automatically position you in our minds for you. We'll automatically, based on our maps of the world and our experiences and our problems, just position you. And we'll do it quickly and we'll do it automatically, and we will make a decision in that moment. Now, this isn't for me. You can't solve my problems. And so it's crucial that we work on positioning ourselves for people as best possible. So, and the real danger that certainly we've experienced, or certainly I've experienced, in if you don't position correctly, you then have conversations with people and they're asking you questions and they're trying to figure it out. If I speak to 5 people and they've positioned me differently in their minds, the feedback I get is so varied that I end up getting confused about what it is, because I go in, I present myself in one way or slightly differently to 5 different people. They'll position me as well in their minds, and then the feedback, I get into this crazy loop of lack of clarity. And so you kind of get yourself sort of sent on different paths back and forth. And so, can you hear that saw in the background?
No.
Okay, that's quite good. I'll try and get that switched off when you speak in a bit, Fee. But basically, if you don't, then it will mess up your own process. So it's so important to, in our opinion at least, is to set this bedrock, to go through this process, to at least have a starting point where you are centralized and agreed. Give me 1 sec. I'm just gonna turn the saw off.
I can't hear
but-
anything, honestly.
Can you
Or is
not?
it just
Okay, I'll get to the
distracting for
next
you
slide.
to, yeah.
Yeah. Right. 5 steps. Everyone loves 5 steps, nice and simple. Competitive alternatives. So Fee will jump more deeply into 3 of these segments that we found most uplift. So one of them is competitive alternatives. So I'll be quite quick on those ones. So this is really, an alternative that your target customers would use if your offering didn't exist. It's not necessarily a company just like yours, a direct competitor. It's what else they might use instead of you. So that's the first thing. Look at those. The second, unique attributes. So what is your kind of secret sauce? What are the things that you do that others can't really? What makes you unique? And it doesn't have to be a fancy bit of technology that no one's developed and you have. I think there's always a perception that the uniqueness needs to be proprietary technology. It could be that you have experience you might have been an athlete back in the day and you understand athlete mindset, and that's something that you bring into the work you do. There could be often the uniqueness, at least at the start, can start with us. And I think that's something that maybe we think it needs to come from the outside and be complex and be something like that. But no, it's more about what is your uniqueness and how does that match the people you're speaking to. Value and proof. So from this uniqueness, what is the value that you then are able to generate, able to create? Why should someone might be like, oh, that's cool. You've got this secret sauce. It's unique. What's it going to do for me? And you want to be able to communicate that, and hopefully in time, and it took us a while to generate the proof, but then once you've done it, you can talk about the proof you will generate, and then the minute you generate a tiny bit about it, you can then share that. And it took us a while to do that, but now, data ultimately is what you want to shoot for. The next one, customers that care, this target market characteristics. So you want to find these people who really care about what it is that you do and are in a position to buy it, because these are the people who will buy more quickly. One of the characteristics of being badly positioned that we've been aware of is conversations that just go and go and go, and you just can't close them because they're not there. They're not at the place where they're ready to buy. So these people buy more quickly. They don't really ask for discounts because they know the value of what you do. And they'll tell their friends about you because they feel deeply about the value of what you deliver. So that's the kind of customers who care. Markets you win. This is a bit about, again, not needing to be 100% unique, being a brand new service in a brand new category with a brand new thing. You have to create all that stuff so that people know where you fit. So definitely fitting into a category helps trigger assumptions in people's minds. You want to make sure that you're in the right category so it triggers the right assumptions. But also, if that's happening, you'll find it a lot easier because you're fitting into a whole map in their brain that will exist to a certain point. So all you're then doing is layering on your uniqueness and your value within that space in their head. And then the last one, which I'm not sure why she didn't put on here, in our view, it sort of wraps them all up and is super important, is this idea of trends, the natural flows that are happening in the environments that create the narratives that people feel are important and can create urgency. So you hop on them and talk about them and how you fit and how you could solve for them, because people will probably be, if they're not feeling them, at least aware of them. And if they're not aware of them, there's an education piece, which is quite interesting there, where they might then go back into the office and see them within their environment. So those are the 5, sort of an overview of these 5 steps that if you do run through, April gives you what you do at each step, and you can kind of work out for your offering where you sit.
And so I thought it'd be helpful just to take you through 3 of the steps that we think had the biggest impact for us, but that also might be interesting as we're all in similar space to kind of share with you. And that was firstly competitive alternatives. So I'll admit, I get a little bit jealous of some people that have got 50 research teams and can produce these beautiful reports about mindfulness and the workplace, and think, oh my gosh, that's our competition. That's who we're up against. How can we possibly compete with these fabulous Gallup and Deloitte reports and Champion Health? And then what we actually, when we sat and did this exercise, what we realized was that those other big services and practitioners are rarely, or if in our case, have never actually been our competition. And I went back and reviewed our pitches, our sales cycle, and the conversations that we've had. And the main pattern that we identified was that we were not being outbid on price, we weren't being outbid by competitors. It was actually the internal teams themselves that were the reason for not engaging with us that we came across most often. So whether it was that they had internal wellbeing teams or HR or CEOs that we were talking to, we're going to do it ourselves, or we're going to take this in-house, was our most common response. And so aside from the fact of having a perceived lack of budget, was that we realized that at the root of most of those no's was actually fear. And there was a fear from the people that we were talking to in the leadership team or the HR team or the CEOs and founders, was that there was a fear that it would expose something in themselves or their business if we came in and started coaching and understanding more about what might be holding them back from growth. There was the fear of being vulnerable. From CEOs and founders' perspectives, that fear of hearing truth from their employees, from a third party. We even had one of our own investors in Moment, who obviously knows what we do very well, back out at the last minute because he had this fear that he wasn't doing a good job, and he'd just prefer not to know. Thank you very much. So what we did to change, so understanding that our next step was just to change what we did, was to lean into asking more questions up front, and not assuming, oh, you must have a problem with your leadership team, let's come in and fix that, because the people that make the decision to bring us in are quite often the leadership team. So it's flip the narrative to understanding their challenge points, needing more confirmation. It's more of a discovery phase and less of a pitch. We also speak now to kind of higher level decision makers and less of the HR teams, because the HR teams themselves don't know what they need, and often they're the ones that need the support as well. And as we've said before, we use that market trend approach so that they don't feel we're personally pointing fingers or personally speaking to them about the challenges. We frame it in a context of everybody does this, but you can get ahead by jumping ahead of the problem and bringing us in. Saw a great stat, love my stats. Saw a great stat yesterday that said that 82% of managers in the UK are accidental leaders, i.e. they've just been promoted because they were the person sitting in the chair. So why should we expect them to have all the training and skills that they need? So that's the kind of approach that we're taking there after doing this exercise. And the other one is value and proof. So why should somebody care about what we do? And we know why we have value, but we hadn't made this really obvious to our clients. So what we changed was our switch from purely well-being to performance and well-being. And that meant that our pitch is able to have more proof points that focus on demonstrating impact on the bottom line. Now, where we don't have that directly, in some instances, we again used existing trends. We used customer testimonials. We used survey information from other clients, anonymized. But we've made it really clear that of the importance of tracking and monitoring, and that they will get that as well, so that their decisions are made from data points, because sometimes that's what people, particularly in our ad industry, want. They want to know that these suggestions that we're making are made from data points. So how can we bring that narrative into everything that we position to them? And then finally, the last one, as we've mentioned already, in market context, we change language from well-being to performance. We focus more on leaderships rather than individuals. We targeted our old industry sectors so that our experience is most directly relevant. And we relied on using insight from larger organizations and research groups to back up the robustness of our offering. So they were the really key things that we focused on. And then going on to step 6, which, as Alex said, is the bonus. April calls it in her book the bonus trends, but actually we believe that it's at the root of everything. Is how can we find credibility with what we do, authenticity, relevancy, and also allowing everybody to drop a little bit of the ego as well, that it's not directed at them, that we don't have to kind of push ourselves to stand out so differently, that we can go with the flow a little bit more. So the resources that we use most frequently are Gallup, Champion Health, and Deloitte to back up our insights with their data. We use other competitor insights. We share a lot on LinkedIn. We comment a lot on LinkedIn. We celebrate when other people are doing good work as well, because it just creates more positivity around our sector. We also really back the wellness is not a yoga class point of view. So wellness as a perk is a big theme that we jump onto. And we're seeing increasingly and being asked increasingly about the pressures of return to work mandates. So how does that move into a hybrid environment impact the modern workplace? And therefore what impact that has on leaderships and exec teams. So they're the kind of main threads that we have hooked onto this year to position ourselves more firmly in the market.
Yeah, and just to double down on a few things there, I think in that wellness is a perk. With the focus there is, wellness is not a perk, should not be. It's part of how businesses should be operating. This idea of what do you do for wellness? Oh, there's a Headspace subscription. That's not that's not wellness within an organization.
Take everybody to the pub on a Friday, that kind of thing.
Is even less wellness. And the other thing just to double down on is this idea of shifting, certainly for me, from this idea of pitching to a discovery conversation. I'm just so much more comfortable rather than going and like pitching myself to a business, just going and trying to understand what the problems are and how we might fit. And do we? Maybe not. Maybe we do. Maybe a little bit, maybe not now, maybe in the future. But it just took so much pressure off me personally, and the conversations became lighter and less I'll talk at the start and then you'll talk at the end. Much more discussive, much more as a conversation. And then one quick one on the data. I'm just always conscious of, because I felt this very early on. I used to work ran a little research company. This idea of empirical data, and and especially if you come from the healthcare space, I think what we're looking for here is data that supports a story. So it's not about like going out and running your own massive research that exactly is exactly what you need to do X, Y, and Z. You're looking for data that supports a story. So you can say, here are some data sets or data from here or whatever that supports your story. And that's, I think, at the early stages before you have your own data is the way forward. And people can ask questions about it and go and read it. You're not in the presentation, you're not saying it's yours or anything. You're just using it to support the narrative. And I think before I jump into the summary, just to kind of recap, this is kind of, we wanted to share a process today and kind of what we experienced. And I'm sure there will be parallels because we're in the same space, which is the whole point. But if you go through this process, you'll find out all your own uniqueness. Hopefully you'll find some parallels as well. But, it's not that our positioning will match yours, obviously. So we talk about it because we've gone through the process and we found it fit and we've tested it in the market, in the conversations we're having, and it feels right. But it is through the process in which you'll find, you know, your bits and pieces rather than sort of from here, if that makes sense. But so that's why what we did and the outcomes we found. So we were a direct to consumer business initially, and we've become a business to business. But what we needed to do was change our approaches. And so from that we found actually we needed, instead of doing a lot of marketing, we do a little bit, but we now do more networking because that's where the business people are, rather than trying to market online. So that's a shift of approach. Another one, for example, is most of our communication was on Instagram when it was direct to consumer. Now most of it is on LinkedIn. So these kind of approaches, think about where your audience is and how you approach them and best are able to have the conversations you need to have. Fee mentioned we modified our language from being well-being led to performance led, because businesses are looking for performance. They still want well-being, but performance drives business outcomes.
And budgets.
And budgets, yeah. Develop this is sort of more recent, I'd say, in the last probably 8 months. Developed to support leadership teams alongside individuals. We went in to say, hey, we can help teams. We've realized that actually we want to speak to leaders and help leadership as well. So it's this parallel side of both groups. Measurement at the center. We always felt this was important, but have done a lot more to bring measurement up and to the fore. And at the start, it's just about talking about it, just saying, you know, everything we do is measured. There's always, and measurement can be light. We said this last time. Measurement doesn't need to be a huge research project. It can be a show of hands at the end, at the lightest thing, a show of hands. Did you enjoy this session? You know, you can't do a lot huge with that, but that is a form of measurement. To give you an example, just making sure every time you do something, can you get some feedback that gives you some sort of data that you can talk about to support a story. So measurement doesn't need to be heavy duty research. I think the more you develop and the more researchy style stuff you can do, the more robust you will be and the more robust you will feel, but you don't need that at the start. And then really seek to understand our customers and continue to really, this is, I guess, the bit before this pitch first discovery, is like really trying to understand what is it, a curiosity into their business, because really that helps us learn about how to position better. And so once we've set that ground thing, is really trying to understand what the challenges so that's kind of our summary.
Yeah.
And then Fee, were you going to do?
Yeah, just to kind of leave with a couple of takeaways, and I'm conscious of time for questions, but I guess the key things that we would recommend: have a read of April's book. It's great, very easy to follow, and as I say, through this process we have discovered real aha moments in how we were doing things that have just made our positioning a lot easier. The first thing was consistency over customization. We've mentioned before, the fit in, don't stand out. One that's really important as well, particularly where we are today, is using community. We're not alone, and there's so many different voices in what we do and different ways to position what we do, that we've really kind of leaned into different communities. We have made connections in the industry, because there's a lot to be said for collaboration as well, and as Alex mentioned, networking. So just the more people we can get talking about mindfulness in the workplace, about good, thoughtful leadership, the better. So we've really kind of leaned into different communities. You know, and as Alex said, it's all about the conversations. This is just a process and a strategy if we're not actually out there having the chats and practicing this. So we're getting out there and having more conversations than we did before, because we feel comfortable in our offering, because we're not trying to customize each time to every new conversation, so it feels less overwhelming every time we walk through the door. So please do that regard in terms of networking. If we're not already connected, come find us on LinkedIn and ask us questions. We'd love to connect and to share anything that we come across in our travels as well. So thanks for listening this morning, or morning for me, 6 a.m. Thanks for your time this evening. And
Thanks so much,
happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks so much, Fee. Thank you, Alex. That was really, really interesting, and I'm sure that everybody got so much from it. I think what would be great now is if we had any questions. Does anybody have any questions for Alex and Fee? Perhaps you could stop sharing the screen.
Yeah, good shout. Thank you.
Is there anybody who wants to ask anything?
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Thanks so much for that presentation. It was really, really outstanding. I get the feeling that mindfulness, well, I can see from what you're doing, mindfulness doesn't form, I mean, my company's called The Business of Mindfulness. That gives you a clue. But it doesn't form a major part of, you're not going in with that as a sort of an offering. And today we're trying to sort of position what we offer as a business. And you clearly said that we're all going to have those sort of elements of how do we position what we want to do. And I get that. Stupid little thing. I'm just interested. You from a marketing point of view, you said you do very little. You sort of do little marketing, and it's more networking and LinkedIn and stuff. Do you do anything like SEO? Or I mean, I know that's a bit boring question, but I'm just interested because we're just 7 months old and we're looking at marketing and doing all sorts of different things. And my gut feeling is, stick to LinkedIn and do some networking and get some referrals and go back to what you said, your original industry. Is that would be the right approach?
So we do a little bit of SEO and also find that writing blogs or commenting on industry themes can get some traction, particularly if you're linking back to other big reports or larger industry resources. But yeah, because honestly, for us, it really is LinkedIn, I think, has more impact. And it's about being consistent on LinkedIn. And we've kind of, so Alex is in New Zealand, I'm in Australia at the moment. So we've learned through being in different time zones, the best time to post on LinkedIn is around 6 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. UK time, because it's most of where our network is. I miss that window and I try and post in Australia time and I get no traction on my posts. So through testing and learning, LinkedIn is a strategy. It's a marketing channel in itself. So you can still test and learn within the LinkedIn environment, connecting to other people, reposting from other people, using consistent hashtags, and just being consistent is really what gets the most traction on that. And we've just recently also taken out Sales Navigator. So using LinkedIn as a targeted sales outreach approach as well. So we have a kind of machine that can now run behind the scenes using the sales tools within LinkedIn. But I'd also just quickly like to come back to your point around mindfulness. Mindfulness is in everything that we do. Mindfulness is still very much part of our offering. But what we discovered in our conversations was that it didn't feel like it fitted to the people that we were talking to. If they had no experience themselves, they didn't know what to do with that information. It felt like a wellness offering rather than something that could really help grow their business and make change in their organization. So our offering is actually still pretty much the same. We just changed the language around it to get a kind of nod of, okay, I see how you can help me up front. And then one of the first things that we do is a mindset and mindfulness workshop. So
no, I think we've got that, and actually mindfulness has sort of dropped down in the priority. I know we still kept the name, but I can't avoid that. But mindfulness in its own right has sort of dropped down to a point, but we've sort of brought back in because we see it as a really good combination when we're doing one-to-one coaching, particularly with senior people, and we can bring in mindfulness as a support to working together with that to give them, help them become more efficient and more productive and more understanding, then that's what we found was that I think you're absolutely right in what you said. It's just about how you position it, and the response from the people you're talking to is clearly, I discovered the day after I started the business that mindfulness actually wasn't going to get me through the door. Other
Right.
stuff is, and
Yeah.
Interesting.
And just to double down on the marketing thing, marketing in support of actual conversations, like to drive those conversations, because that's where the movement ends up happening. I think that was that shift for us, was like with the networking, marketing to networking was marketing support to support networking to support as many ideally face-to-face conversations as we can have. For our market, it's all about speaking to these people, because it's not a small decision, I guess. This isn't a sort of I don't know. It's seemingly potentially not in cost, but a trickier decision for people to make than just to buy a Headspace
Emotionally.
subscription for everyone, because it's harder to understand and wrap your head around long-term benefits, whereas they can just tick a box with a Headspace subscription. That's why that conversation is just so important.
thank you.
Thank you for that. Claire.
Yeah, you had a question.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Hi, Alex. Hi, Fiona. Thanks for sharing again all this very, very, very interesting information that you have. Yeah, I just got a question in my mind. It's been a question in my mind for quite a long time, actually, but it's come up in this presentation, which is this kind of being able to use metrics, use measurements, use data points to measure the effect of what we do against performance. And I'm just really curious about, what do you use for that? Is that using the client's own, measurement metrics? Do you have your own proprietary way of doing this? Is it a third party way of doing it? How is that actually sort of affected?
You want to take that one, Alex? You're the measurement
Sure.
person.
Sure.
I trust you on that.
At the start, people like to know that what you do, what's happening, is being measured. I think that's a sort of first step. Like, yes, we measure. I think that's quite an important thing. In our experience, to link directly to core business metrics, so churn of staff, turnover of staff and revenue or some measure of productivity, that really is the gold standard. But you can't just walk in the door and do that. And what we genuinely believe in time we can, once we know a business and we can understand what metrics are important to them and we can figure out how to connect to them. What we found was that even when we went to speak to people with that belief that we could, it came across as a bit disingenuous, saying we can link to the bottom line. Ultimately, people were a bit like, no, you can't. And the truth was, in that moment, we absolutely couldn't, because we don't know what metrics matter. So I think coming in and saying you have some measurement, and then you got to start with what you can. So I mentioned like a show of hands at the start. So if you run one session and you can have a very short questionnaire at the end that starts to say, you gauge level of value people took out from it, choose a bunch of metrics that will tell the story that you want to tell. And then this is what we did in the very early days. The first thing we did was we'd run a workshop, we'd choose the metrics we wanted to report back, we'd run the workshop, we'd send the survey, we'd get the metrics, and they'd only be, might be a group of 20 people, but you can still turn that into percentages. And then you send them back to the person who organized it and you say, 98% of people found this valuable
and want to do it again.
They want to do it again, and these are the other areas they found they would like to explore that we also cover. So does that give you a sense of like that's kind of the start of measurement and metrics, and then where you can go to? But it's only in time you can get to these, and you have to be there. Like with one of our clients, we're looking to now connect to revenue. That's kind of the the gold standard.
Yeah.
But that we've been there, I don't know, 15 months ish. And it's only now that we've been in long enough and we learned enough about them that, and we can we've been there long enough to show that the revenue is here and now it's here. Like that, all of that takes time. So I think people see through when you try to overpromise on this stuff, but you can certainly talk about it and shoot for it. But you just want to make sure you're kind of playing the game. You actually can play it each time.
No, thank you.
I think there's also anecdotal evidence as well that's still data points. So any feedback you get that's anecdotal is still a data point that, you know, people want to be assured that somebody else has felt something from working with you. So that's something that we leaned on, just asking people for comment or feedback on their coaching sessions. And then now what we do goes all the way through to kind of 15-page report, but that's part of our program that we have. But we can then now show trends, which is very helpful. But when we couldn't before, we would, as we mentioned, use trends from Gallup or Deloitte that just shows that bigger picture of what mindfulness in the workplace can do or what wellbeing programs create. So it's a kind of a combination of all of them.
No,
I could show you the measurement, Claire. If you connect on LinkedIn, and I can show you what we're measuring now, and that might be helpful. Or anyone.
That'd be really helpful. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm definitely part way there from what you're saying. Because I was, you know, after a workshop or whatever, I would send out a questionnaire, and then I write a report up, and this is what people have said. Do they want this again? Yes, they do. But I think what you've just said is really interesting. Is maybe think about some other metrics in them, like, I don't know, you know. Do you believe that this will, you know, positively, you know, support you in your day-to-day? Maybe a bit more kind of, do you believe this is going to help you moving forward with productivity? So that I'm just getting ideas now.
And business metrics, like, will this make you more productive? Do you feel your output would increase if you did this once a month? That sort of stuff.
That's thank you very much. That's the missing bit of the puzzle that you've just put the pieces there. Lovely, thank you. And I will email you as well, Alex. That'd be lovely, or message you on LinkedIn. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I think we have just 1 or 2 minutes left, and I think Katie wants to ask a question.
Hi, I'm just conscious, I think Deirdre actually.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry about that, Deirdre. Yes, I think you might be first. Apologies.
Hey, thanks, Katie and Sally and Alex and Fiona. That was really good. There's 2 parts to kind of my question. I know you don't overtly lead with mindfulness, which really makes sense. But I'm just wondering, when it comes to mindfulness in the workplace, did you have any concerns, or did you have to do anything around power dynamics in the workplace? And then maybe the you know, the absence of safety. I'm just wondering, like, kind of how deep you go on the mindfulness front. So and how, if at all, you have dealt with power dynamics being a barrier to participation, or at least engagement, that you don't have, you know, that it's safe for people to kind of go to the places where mindfulness can bring them. And then my second question, if it's not too intrusive into your business, is that I'm just interested in the life cycle with clients, with your clients. Like, do you kind of go in deep and filter out, or do you go in light and go deeper, you know, in terms of frequency or time with them? Or is it does that make sense in terms of like a kind of a deeper dive over time with them, or what kind of frequency do you have?
I'm afraid you might have to be very quick with this answer. I'm sure people have to go, but if everybody's all right staying for a couple
I can do the last bit really quick, which is the frequency is predetermined. We have a program, so there's a cadence which is agreed that we meet with individuals. So there's monthly for the whole organization, and also for our one-to-one sessions, but we also have a channel of support for people in between. And then the first original piece, and we go as deep as people want to go, is individually led. So we you know, we're very much led by the individual in each coaching session.
But it's shallow to start because we don't know where people are.
It is shallow to start.
Yeah, makes sense.
Great. And then the safety piece, I would say that not everybody leans in immediately, and there's definitely a journey that we go on with some individuals. Even the people that sign off the budgets, you know, we've had our key testimonial on our website. The CEO actually says, I was very skeptical. I didn't think this stuff was going to work, but he's felt the transformation in himself. So I kind of love those. I love the skeptics that we managed to convert, bring them on. So yeah, that's why it's a combination of the coaching and the workshops. And as you know, that one-to-one allows for that environment to kind of grow and for people to get more comfortable. What I will say on that is that it takes around 3 to 4 months, we've noted, for people to start to kind of really lean into those sessions being confidential, to lean into them being for them and their growth. So it's not something that's built immediately. It is you know, it's usually a kind of 3-month moment where all of a sudden things start to kind of unfold for people. But I see that that's our job, is to create that environment of safety for them, particularly if they don't have it in their organization or their direct management relationship.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was such an interesting and insightful session. I don't suppose it's possible we can have the slides afterwards and I can potentially share that with everybody here, because I'm not sure if everybody made notes on that, but there was a lot to take in. So I just want to say a massive thank you, and thank you for everybody who's come along, and yeah, we hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much.